You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are just smart. And that is the problem. Let me tell you a quiet truth. The people who think the most often suffer the most. The smartest minds are usually the most tired minds. If you are watching this, there's a high chance this video is about you. Because smart people do not suffer loudly. They suffer silently. They smile in front of others. But inside, their mind never stops talking. At night, when the world is quiet, their brain becomes loud. One thought becomes 10. 10 thoughts become 100. And suddenly sleep disappears. You replay old conversations. You imagine future problems. You analyze things that never even happened. And the worst part is that you know you are doing it. But you cannot stop. This is overthinking. But here's the part no one explains. Overthinking is not stupidity. It is intelligence without direction. Smart people see more. They notice patterns others miss. They understand consequences deeply. A normal mind sees one road. A smart mind sees 1,000 roads. And that sounds like a gift, until every road ends in fear. You think about what could go wrong. You think about how people might judge you. You think about the meaning behind every word. Someone says something small. You hear something big, someone stays silent. You hear rejection, someone looks away. You feel unwanted. Your brain fills the gaps with the worst possible story, not because you want pain, but because your mind is trained to predict outcomes. Smart people live in the future, and the future is always uncertain. That is why anxiety loves intelligence. A sharp mind cuts deeper when it turns against itself. Now listen carefully. This part matters. Overthinking is the brain trying to protect you. Yes, protect you. Your mind believes if it thinks enough, you will never be hurt again. If it analyzes everything, you will avoid mistakes. If it imagines every danger, you will stay safe. But protection becomes poison when it never turns off. Imagine a guard who never sleeps, never rests, never relaxes. That guard becomes a prison. Smart people build mental cages and call it preparation. You plan conversations in your head. You rehearse arguments. You prepare for rejection before it happens. And slowly, you stop living. You don't fail, but you don't move either. You don't get rejected, but you don't try. You don't get hurt, but you stay lonely. This is the silent suffering of intelligence. And here's the cruel irony. The smarter you are, the harder it is to explain your pain. Because people say you are smart, you should know better. But knowing does not stop feeling. Understanding psychology does not stop emotions. A smart person can explain their sadness but still drown in it. Let me tell you something that might change everything. Your mind is not your enemy. Your relationship with it is. You treat every thought as truth. But thoughts are not facts. They are suggestions. A smart mind produces more suggestions, not better ones. Overthinking is not depth. It is repetition. True intelligence knows when to stop thinking. The real problem is not your mind. It is that no one taught you how to rest it. You were praised for thinking, never taught to feel. So you live in your head and forget your body. You forget to breathe deeply. You forget the present moment. You forget that life only happens now. And here's the funny truth. Smart people suffer until they learn one skill, letting thoughts pass without following them. You don't need to win arguments in your head. You don't need to solve every future problem. You don't need to understand everything right now. Peace is not found in answers. Peace is found in silence. And silence is not empty. It is where healing begins. If this video feels personal, it means your mind is powerful. And power needs guidance. You are not meant to think less. You are meant to think wisely. And that is when intelligence stops being pain and starts becoming peace. There is a type of pain that does not scream. It does not cry for attention. It does not ask for help. It sits quietly inside the mind. If you are intelligent, you probably know this pain very well. You learned early how to stay quiet, how to stay composed, how to stay logical. You learned how to understand things instead of feeling them. And slowly, without realizing it, your mind became louder than your life. Smart people do not suffer because life is harder for them. They suffer because they see more than others. They see patterns. They see consequences. They see hidden meanings. And once you see too much, you cannot unsee it. A child touches fire once and learns not to touch again. A smart mind touches fire 1,000 times inside imagination. You replay moments. You replay mistakes. You replay conversations that already ended, not because you enjoy it, but because your brain does not know how to stop. This is not madness. This is intelligence without rest. Most people think overthinking means thinking deeply. It does not. Overthinking is shallow thinking on repeat. The same thought, again and again, different angles, same pain. And smart people are especially good at looping thoughts because they can always find another reason, another explanation, another what if. You are not anxious because you are weak. You're anxious because your brain works too well. It works even when it should rest. It works when nothing is happening. It works against you. Let me tell you something important. Your suffering did not start recently. It started the day you realized the world is complicated. Other people were playing. You were observing. Other people were reacting. You were analyzing. Other people were feeling. You were thinking about feelings. That is where the split happened. You stepped out of life and into your head. And once that happens, everything changes. Joy becomes delayed. Pain becomes amplified. Silence becomes heavy. You begin to live in anticipation instead of experience. You don't enjoy moments. You evaluate them. You don't rest. You prepare. You don't trust. You prepare. And prediction is exhausting. Smart people are rarely present. Their body is here. Their mind is 5 steps ahead. They are already planning what to say next, what could go wrong, how this could end. And the future is the most dangerous place to live because the future exists only in imagination. And imagination does not care about your peace. It cares about possibilities, every possible mistake, every possible rejection, every possible loss. A less intelligent mind chooses one story. A smart mind creates 1,000, and most of them are painful. This is why intelligence is closely connected to anxiety. Anxiety is not fear before you speak. You think after you speak. You think while others speak. Your brain never clocks out. And at night, when the world finally becomes quiet, your mind takes the stage. This is when suffering grows. You lie in bed. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are awake. You remember something embarrassing from years ago as if it happened today. You imagine conversations that will never happen. You argue with people who are not even present. You fix problems that do not yet exist. This is not productivity. This is mental overwork. And here is the cruel part. Because you are smart, people expect you to handle it. They say, you are strong. You are intelligent. You will figure it out. So you don't complain. You don't collapse. You internalize. Smart people suffer quietly because they believe they should be able to handle it. But knowing how something works does not mean you are immune to it. A doctor can still get sick. A psychologist can still feel lost. An intelligent person can still break. In fact, they break differently. Not outwardly. Inwardly, they lose peace, they lose simplicity, they lose sleep, and slowly they lose joy. Because joy requires presence, and presence requires silence. A mind that never stops talking cannot hear happiness. You may have noticed this. Even when good things happen, you cannot fully enjoy them. You think, how long will this last? What could ruin this? What comes next? You never allow yourself to simply be okay. Your mind is always preparing for the fall. This is survival mode intelligence. Your brain learned that being alert keeps you safe, so it never relaxes. But safety without rest becomes suffering. Let me say something clearly. Your mind is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was trained to do. At some point, thinking helped you survive. It helped you adapt. It helps you understand people. It helped you avoid danger. But what saved you then is suffocating you now. This is the tragedy of smart people. They outgrow situations, but not habits. You learn to think your way out of pain. But some pain cannot be solved. Some pain must be felt and released. And smart people hate that because feeling means losing control. Thinking feels safer. Thinking feels familiar. Thinking gives the illusion that you are in charge. The control is not peace. Control is tension. Peace comes from trust, and trust is difficult when you see too much. This is why smart people often feel tired, even when they do nothing, because their mind is always doing something. You carry invisible weight. No one sees it. No one acknowledges it. But you feel it every single day. This is only the beginning, because intelligence does not just affect your thoughts, it affects your emotions, your relationships, your sense of self. And if this feels uncomfortably accurate, it means we are touching the truth. In the next part, we will go deeper. We will see how a smart mind slowly becomes a prison, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it does not know how to stop protecting you. And once you understand that, everything begins to change. A prison does not always have walls. Sometimes it is thoughts. Smart people really feel trapped by the world. They feel trapped by their own mind. From the outside, everything looks normal. You function, you work, you talk, you laugh when needed. But inside, there is constant pressure, a feeling that you cannot fully explain. It feels like you are always on edge, always alert, always one step away from something going wrong. This is how a smart mind slowly becomes a prison. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. It begins with awareness. You notice things other people ignore. A change in tone, a pause in a conversation, a look that lasts a second too long. You pick up information constantly. Your brain treats everything as data, and data must be processed. So you process. You ask, what did that mean? Why did they say it that way? Did I do something wrong? And once you start questioning, your mind does not stop. Because a smart mind always finds another angle, another explanation, another possibility. This is how the walls begin forming. Each thought feels logical, each worry feels reasonable. That is why it is so hard to escape. A simple mind doubts once. A smart mind doubts forever. You start reviewing your behavior, your words, your reactions. You criticize yourself before anyone else can. You believe that if you judge yourself first, others will not hurt you. This is not confidence, this is defense. Your mind becomes a courtroom where you are always on trial, and the judge is never satisfied. You replay moments in slow motion. Why did I say that I should have stayed quiet? I sounded stupid. They probably think less of me. Even when no one else remembers, your mind does. Because smart people have strong memory and weak forgiveness, especially toward themselves. Over time, this constant self monitoring creates fear of speaking, fear of acting, fear of being seen. So you start shrinking, not physically, mentally. You become careful, too careful. You measure words, you delay decisions, you avoid risks, and slowly life becomes smaller. This is the prison, not built by others, built by thought. The smart mind values control. Control feels safe. If you can predict everything, nothing can surprise you. But life cannot be predicted, so your brain works harder. It imagines worst case scenarios to stay prepared. It thinks if I expect pain, it will hurt less. But expecting pain does not reduce it, it multiplies it. You suffer in advance. You feel rejection before it happens. You feel failure before you try. You feel lost before anything is lost. This is called anticipatory suffering, and intelligent people are experts at it. Your mind believes this is responsible. People say you are thoughtful, you are careful, you think deeply. They do not see that thinking deeply is not the same as thinking endlessly. Endless thinking leads nowhere. It just circles the same pain with different words. Inside the prison, everything feels urgent. Every decision feels heavy. Even small choices drain you. What should I say? What should I do? What if I choose wrong? You get tired before you even act. And when you are tired, your mind gets louder. Because fatigue lowers resistance. At night, the guards disappear. There are no distractions, no responsibilities, just you and your thoughts. That is when the prison closes in. You cannot run from your mind because you live inside it. You try to distract yourself. You scroll. You watch videos. You keep noise around. But silence always returns, and silence exposes the cage. Smart people fear silence because silence means they have to face their thoughts. But here's the truth. Silence is not the enemy. Untrained thinking is. Your mind was never taught how to rest, only how to analyze, only how to solve, only how to understand. No one taught you how to let go. So you cling to thoughts because they feel familiar. Even painful thoughts feel safer than emptiness, because emptiness feels like loss of control. This is why smart people struggle with relaxation. They feel guilty when resting. They feel anxious when doing nothing. They feel uncomfortable when they are not productive. Their mind tells them, you should be thinking, you should be improving, you should be fixing something. This voice never shuts up, and eventually, the prison feels permanent. You start believing this is just who you are. An overthinker, old warrior, someone who cannot relax, but that is not who you are. That is a habit, a deeply ingrained mental habit. Habits feel like identity when they repeat long enough, but habits can change. The prison is not locked. The door was never closed. You just forgot how to stop guarding it. And here is the most painful part. Smart people often defend their prison. They say, this is just how my mind works. Thinking keeps me safe. Overthinking is better than being careless. They confuse suffering with depth. But peace is not shallow. Peace is clarity. And clarity only comes when thinking slows down. This part is uncomfortable to hear, because slowing down thinking feels like losing intelligence. But intelligence is not noise, it is precision. And precision requires calm. In the next part, we go back to the beginning, to childhood, to learning, to the moment thinking became survival. Because you were not born like this, you were shaped. And understanding how is the first step out of the prison. No one is born an overthinker. A child does not analyze life. A child lives it. They feel hunger, they cry, they laugh. They forget. They do not sit with thoughts that last for hours. So, if you are someone whose mind never stops, it was learned. Somewhere in your early life, thinking became necessary. Not helpful. Necessary. You learn slowly that being alert keeps you safe. Maybe the environment was unpredictable. Maybe emotions around you were unstable. Maybe love felt conditional. So you adapted. And smart children adapt quickly. You began watching closely. You studied moods. You read faces. You listened to tone. You learned when to speak and when to stay quiet. You learned what behavior earned approval and what behavior caused tension. This is intelligence in survival mode. You did not think too much because you wanted to. You thought too much because it worked. Thinking helped you avoid trouble, helped you avoid conflict, helped you avoid rejection. Your brain connected the simple rule. If I understand everything, nothing can hurt me. So you became observant. You became careful. You became mentally active at a very young age. While other children were present, you were aware. While other children were careless, you were cautious. And adults praised that. They said, you are mature for your age. You are smart. You understand things deeply. No one realized you were carrying weight too early. No one asked why a child needs to be so alert, so you kept sharpening your mind. and your emotions stay behind. You learn to explain feelings instead of feeling them. You learn logic before safety. You learn thinking before trust, and that imbalance stayed. Over time, your brain stopped turning off because it believed danger could return at any moment. A smart brain remembers patterns. If unpredictability happened once, it prepares forever. This is how hyper awareness forms. You do not just react to life, you scan it. Every room, every conversation, every relationship. Your mind is always asking, is this safe? What does this mean? What should I do? This constant scanning is exhausting, but to your brain, it feels normal because it has always been like this. This is why many smart people feel tired without knowing why. The fatigue is old, years old. You were rewarded for suppressing emotions, so you became good at it. You learned to stay calm when you were not calm. You learned to stay logical when you were hurting. You learned to be strong before you learned to be supported. That strength became your identity. But strength without softness turns into tension, and tension turns into suffering. You may not remember the moment you started overthinking, because it did not start as a problem. It started as protection. Your brain learned that thinking ahead keeps you in control. Control became comfort, even if it was uncomfortable. That is why letting go feels scary now, because control feels like safety. But safety built on tension is fragile. You might notice this pattern. When things are calm, your mind creates problems because calm feels unfamiliar. Chaos feels familiar, so your brain recreates what it knows. It brings up worries. It questions happiness. It looks for threats. This is not self-sabotage. This is conditioning. Your mind is trying to return to known territory, even if that territory hurts. Smart people often grow up being responsible early. Emotionally responsible, mentally responsible. They learn to manage situations beyond their age. Our responsibility never left. Now, as an adult, you feel responsible for everything. Other people's feelings, other people's reactions, other people's expectations. You overthink because you believe everything depends on you. This belief creates pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety fuels overthinking, and the cycle continues. Your intelligence strengthens the cycle because you can always justify it. You can explain why you worry. You can explain why you think ahead. You can explain why you cannot relax. But explanations do not heal. Understanding does not release. Awareness is the first step, but not the last. Here's the truth. You are not broken. Your brain adapted to survive, but survival mode is not meant to be permanent. The mind that protected you as a child is now overprotecting you as an adult. And overprotection is another form of harm. In the next part, we will connect the dots. How intelligence feeds anxiety, why smart people feel fear more deeply, and why knowing more often means worrying more. Because once you understand this connection, you stop blaming yourself, and when blame ends, healing begins. Anxiety does not come from nowhere. It grows in minds that see too much. An unintelligent fear is loud and obvious. An intelligent fear is quiet and convincing. Smart people do not panic easily. They calculate. They imagine outcomes. They predict consequences. They prepare for impact. And this preparation never ends. Anxiety is not about danger. It is about awareness of danger. The more you understand the world, the more you realize how much can go wrong. A child runs freely because they do not imagine accidents. A smart adult walks carefully because they concede every possibility. Your intelligence expands reality, but it also expands fear. You know how fragile things are. You know how quickly situations change. You know how easily people leave. So your mind stays alert, always ready, always watching. This alertness feels responsible. But responsibility without boundaries becomes anxiety. You notice details others miss. A slight change in behavior, a delayed reply, a different tone. Your brain does not ignore these signals. It connects them. It creates meaning, often painful meaning. Your intelligence fills gaps with logic. But logic without evidence turns into assumption, and assumption becomes fear. You do not wait for things to happen. You imagine them, and imagination feels real to the brain. Your body reacts to imagined threats the same way it reacts to real ones. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, breath shortens. This happens even when nothing is happening. This is anxiety. Smart people experience anxiety as constant mental noise, not always panic, more like pressure, a background tension that never fully leaves. You might appear calm, but inside, your mind is busy, always preparing. This is why smart people often struggle with sleep. Sleep requires surrender. An anxious, intelligent mind does not surrender easily. It believes staying awake keeps you safe. It replays the day. It prepares tomorrow. It rechecks everything, and when you are tired, your thinking becomes darker. Fatigue reduces perspective. Problems feel bigger. Mistakes feel heavier. The future feels threatening. Your intelligence works against you when energy is low. You may notice that your anxiety increases during quiet moments. Because silence gives space to thoughts, your brain does not like empty space. It fills it with worries, with questions, with imagined scenarios. This is why distraction feels relieving, but relief is temporary. Anxiety returns when distraction ends. Smart people often try to solve anxiety by understanding it. They read, they analyze, they think more. But anxiety does not disappear through thinking because thinking created it. Anxiety needs reassurance, not explanation. Your brain is not asking for more information, it is asking for safety. But safety is not found in future prediction, it is found in present experience. Here is the painful contradiction. Intelligence lives in the future. What next? What could go wrong? This constant forward motion creates restlessness. You cannot relax because relaxation feels unproductive. Your brain believes if you stop thinking, you lose control. But control is not calm, control is effort. Calm is absence of effort. Smart people confuse effort with value. They believe effort equals safety, so they keep effort running even when it hurts. This is why intelligent people often experience functional anxiety. They work, they succeed, they perform, but they do not feel at ease. They carry tension even in success, because their mind never turns off. The smarter you are, the more convincing your fears sound. Your anxiety does not scream nonsense. It whispers logic. It says, this could happen, this might go wrong, this is realistic. And because you are intelligent, you listen, you trust your mind. But the mind does not always tell truth, it tells probability. And probability without grounding creates suffering. You are not afraid because something bad will happen. You are afraid because you can imagine it clearly. And imagination is powerful, but power without regulation is dangerous. In the next part, we will move into relationships, because nowhere does overthinking and anxiety hurt more than in connection with others. Attachment, love, fear of loss. This is where smart people feel pain most deeply. If intelligence causes overthinking, relationships expose it. Nowhere does a smart mind suffer more than in connection with another human, because relationships are unpredictable. And smart people hate unpredictability. You can understand systems, you can analyze ideas, you can solve problems, but you cannot fully understand people. And that scares an intelligent mind. So it starts working harder. You analyze texts, you analyze silence, you analyze behavior. You ask, what did that mean? Why did they say it like that? Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Love becomes a puzzle, and puzzles never end. Smart people do not love lightly. They attach deeply, because when they connect, they think about it fully. They imagine futures, they imagine outcomes, they imagine loss. They love with their mind before they love with their heart, and that creates vulnerability. You don't just feel emotions, you anticipate them. You feel pain before it arrives. This is why intelligent people often experience anxious attachment, not because they are needy, but because they are aware. They know how easily people change. They know how fragile bonds are. They know how quickly connection disappears, so they stay alert. They monitor closeness. They monitor distance. They fear shifts. A delayed message feels like rejection. A short reply feels like withdrawal. A change in tone feels like loss. Your mind fills the gap with stories, not because you want drama, but because you seek certainty. And certainty is rare in human connection. Smart people crave clarity, but relationships live in ambiguity. This mismatch creates suffering. You might notice you think more after interactions. After conversations, your mind replays everything. You question yourself. Was I too much? Was I too quiet? Did I seem boring? Did I seem needy? You hold yourself responsible for the emotional outcome. You believe if I say the right thing, this won't fall apart. This belief creates pressure. Pressure suffocates connection. And the more you care, the more you think. This is why smart people often feel emotionally exhausted after social interactions. Their mind does not rest when connection is involved. They are not just present, they are evaluating. You may feel lonely even when you are not alone, because your mind is never relaxed with others. You are always slightly guarded, because attachment means risk, and smart people understand risk. They know that loving deeply means the possibility of deep pain, so they try to manage love instead of experiencing it. They try to think their way through emotions. But emotions cannot be managed like ideas. They must be felt, and feeling requires vulnerability. Vulnerability means uncertainty. Uncertainty scares an intelligent mind. So smart people do one of two things. They overattach, or they detach. Some cling mentally, some distance emotionally. Both are protection, both create suffering. Overthinking in relationships is often mistaken for caring, but caring is presence, overthinking is fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. Smart people often believe they are hard to love because they see their complexity. They think if I am this complicated, who will stay? This belief creates anxiety. Anxiety seeks reassurance. Reassurance never feels enough because reassurance soothes emotion, not thought. And thoughts keep coming. You may notice that even when someone reassures you, your mind finds another doubt. What if they change? What if they leave? What if I'm a temporary choice? This does not mean you don't trust them. It means you don't trust permanence. Smart people understand impermanence. They know nothing lasts forever. That knowledge hurts in relationships because love wants eternity. But intelligence sees endings. So smart people live with a paradox. They want deep connection, but they fear deep loss. This creates inner conflict. You want closeness, but closeness activates fear. You want love, but love triggers overthinking, and overthinking slowly erodes joy. You might find yourself holding back emotions, not because you don't feel them, but because you don't want to overwhelm others. You analyze your own intensity, you edit yourself, you become less visible. And this creates another pain, feeling unseen. Smart people often feel misunderstood, not because others don't care, but because they don't express freely. They hide complexity. They simplify themselves to be accepted. This creates internal loneliness, being with people but not fully known. This loneliness hurts deeply. In the next part, we will explore that loneliness, why intelligent people often feel alone even when surrounded, and why the mind that understands everyone often feels understood by no one. Loneliness is not always being alone. Sometimes it is being surrounded and still feeling unseen. Smart people experience this kind of loneliness often, not because they lack people, but because they lack resonance. They understand many, but feel understood by few. Their mind operates on a different frequency. They notice things others ignore. They question things others accept. They feel things others dismiss. This difference creates distance, not physical distance, emotional distance. In conversations, you may feel slightly out of place. You listen carefully, you respond thoughtfully, but something feels missing. The depth you feel does not mean depth in return. This creates quiet frustration. You don't want to sound intense, you don't want to overwhelm. So you hold back, you simplify your thoughts. You speak less than you think, and when you do that long enough, you start feeling invisible. Smart people often feel lonely because they edit themselves. They hide complexity to fit in. They lower depth to avoid being misunderstood. But this comes at a cost. The cost is connection. Real connection requires authenticity, but authenticity feels risky when you are different. You fear being labeled too serious, too intense, too complicated. So you keep your inner world private, and privacy becomes isolation. This is why intelligent people often prefer solitude, not because they dislike people, but because solitude feels safer than partial connection. Being alone hurts less than being misunderstood, but long-term solitude creates another pain, the pain of not being known. Smart people carry rich inner worlds, thoughts, ideas, emotions. When these are not shared, they stagnate, and stagnation feels heavy. You may feel there is so much inside you with nowhere to go. This creates pressure. Pressure turns inward. It becomes sadness. It becomes emptiness. You might notice that small talk drains you, not because you are antisocial, but because it does not nourish you. Your mind craves meaning. But meaning is rare, so you feel lonely even in crowds. And when you finally meet someone who feels similar, you attach deeply. Because resonance is rare, you feel seen, but that also creates fear. Fear of losing the one who understands you. This fear feeds overthinking, and the cycle continues. Loneliness and overthinking feed each other. The lonelier you feel, the more you think. The more you think, the lonelier you feel. Smart people often retreat into their mind when connection disappoints. But the mind is not a replacement for human warmth. It can analyze loneliness. It cannot heal it. You might distract yourself with learning, reading, watching, thinking. But information does not replace connection. It only numbs the ache temporarily. There is another reason intelligent people feel lonely. They see reality clearly. They see superficiality. They see dishonesty. They see social masks. This awareness creates distance. You may feel that many interactions lack authenticity. This makes you withdraw. But withdrawal increases loneliness. This is not superiority, it is sensitivity. A sensitively intelligent mind feels deeply, and deep feeling requires safety. Without safety, you close. Loneliness becomes familiar. Familiarity feels comfortable even when painful. So you accept it. You tell yourself this is just how I am. But this is not identity. This is adaptation. You adapted to protect yourself. But protection became isolation. In the next part, we confront the illusion that fuels all this suffering, the illusion of control. Because smart people believe mental control, the belief that if you think enough, you can manage life. You believe if I understand everything, nothing will surprise me. If I prepare for every outcome, nothing will hurt me. This belief feels intelligent, but it is an illusion. Control is comforting because uncertainty is frightening, and smart people understand uncertainty deeply. They know how fragile things are. They know how fast life changes. They know how easily people leave, so they try to outthink uncertainty. They turn life into a problem that must be solved. But life is not a math equation. It is an experience, and experiences cannot be controlled without being destroyed. The illusion begins subtly. You think if I choose the right words, this conversation will go well. If I plan carefully, this relationship will last. If I stay alert, I will avoid pain. These thoughts seem reasonable, but they slowly turn into pressure Because control demands perfection. You must think correctly, react correctly, choose correctly. One mistake feels dangerous, so you tighten your grip. And the tighter you grip life, the more tense you become. Smart people confuse control with responsibility. They believe if something goes wrong, they fail to think enough. This creates guilt. Guilt creates more thinking. More thinking creates more fear, and the loop tightens. Here is the truth. Control does not prevent pain. It only delays living. Pain is part of life. No amount of intelligence can remove that. But smart people struggle to accept this because acceptance feels like surrender, and surrender feels like weakness. So they fight reality mentally. They resist what is. They live in what should be. This creates constant friction. Friction creates exhaustion. This is why intelligent people feel mentally tired even on calm days. They are always holding something, watching something, managing something. Let me say this clearly. Thinking does not equal control. Thinking creates awareness. Awareness without acceptance creates suffering. You are not suffering because you think too much. You are suffering because you believe you must. You believe stopping would be dangerous. You believe relaxing would be careless. But peace is not carelessness. Peace is trust. Trust that you can handle life as it happens. Trust that you do not need to simulate every future. Trust that pain will not destroy you. This trust is difficult for intelligent people because they have seen pain. They know its depth. So they try to prevent it. But prevention through thinking never works. It only keeps you anxious. The illusion of control keeps smart people stuck between fear and exhaustion. They are not free to relax. They are not free to feel. They are not free to be present. They are always preparing. Preparation without action is anxiety. Preparation without rest is suffering. Control feels like safety, but real safety comes from resilience, knowing you can adapt, knowing you can recover, knowing you can survive pain. Smart people underestimate their emotional resilience. They rely on thinking instead of trusting themselves. This keeps them trapped. In the final part, we will break this cycle, not by thinking more, but by shifting how the mind is used. And this is where intelligence stops being a curse and starts becoming wisdom. There is nothing wrong with your intelligence. It was never the enemy. It was simply overused, like a muscle that never rests. The goal was never to think less. The goal is to think wisely. Wisdom is not loud. Wisdom knows when to stop. For the first time, you must learn something new. Not how to analyze, not how to predict, not how to prepare, but how to allow. Allow thoughts to come without following them. Allow feelings to exist without explaining them. Allow moments to pass without judging them. This feels uncomfortable at first because you are used to doing something. Silence feels empty, but silence is not empty. It is space, and space is where healing happens. A smart mind fears silence because silence removes control. But control was never peace, control was effort. Peace is effortlessness. It does not require thinking. It requires presence. You do not need to stop thoughts. You need to stop believing every thought. Thoughts are not commands, they are invitations. You do not have to accept every invitation. This is the shift. When a thought appears, you observe it. You do not chase it. You do not argue with it. You do not expand it. You let it pass. At first, your mind will resist. It will create urgency. It'll say, this is important. This needs solving. This cannot wait. But most thoughts are not urgent. They are habits. Old patterns asking for attention. You do not fight them. You do not obey them. You acknowledge and return to now. Now is simple. Now has breath. Now has sensation. Now has life. The present moment does not ask for explanation. It asks for awareness. Smart people struggle with this shift because it feels passive. But passivity is not weakness. It is trust. Trusting your ability to respond when needed, not before. You stop rehearsing life. You start living it. You feel more. You think less. And nothing falls apart. In fact, things become clearer. Your intelligence becomes precise instead of overwhelming. You use thinking when it is useful. You rest when it is not. This balance creates calm. Your relationships change. You stop monitoring reactions. You become present. You listen instead of analyzing. Connection deepens. Loneliness softens. Your mind becomes quieter, not empty, focused. You realize something important. You were never broken. You were protecting yourself for too long. And now you no longer need to. Your intelligence matures. It becomes wisdom. Wisdom does not need constant effort. It trusts life. It accepts uncertainty. It allows pain without resisting it. And in that acceptance, pain loses power. This is the freedom smart people are searching for, not the absence of thought, but the end of domination by thought. You do not need to change who you are.